As Emily Dickinson was so good at doing, we have here today a poem which represents, in my opinion, wholeheartedly, the objective correlative. What is the objective correlative? Also summarized as not in ideas, but things. This is to say that the act of literature is more expressly infused into the human experience, not by words telling us things, not in ideas. Do not tell me Susie was sad, but things. This infuses stories to us, not when you tell us that Susie was sad, but when you show us Susie breaking down in the corner and crying, then taking from her pocket a picture of her boyfriend and tossing it into the trash bin. Then we understand Susie's heart was broken. Susie is broken. We are not told Susie had a bad day at school and her boyfriend left her. That made her sad. You'd be sad too, wouldn't you? No, you just show us the emotional scene and we understand that Susie is emotional, and we are then forced to reconcile with that tragedy, with that heartbreak for ourselves. We have from Emily Dickinson today a video which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, ever growing here on the channel, but number two being the Emily Dickinson playlist, a playlist of videos dedicated exclusively to the greatest poet of all time, Emily Dickinson. Now, the poem in question today is not one of Miss Dickinson's best known poems. It is I Have No Life But This, and it reads as such. I have no life but this, to lead it here, nor any death but less dispelled from there, nor tied to earths to come, nor action new, except through this extent, the realm of you. This might seem, on the surface, to be the exact opposite of the objective correlative, as Emily Dickinson is telling us expressly in words, I have no life but this. But the real genius of Emily Dickinson happens deeper in the poem than that. Sure, our speaker here is telling us something expressly. Our speaker here is telling us through the words themselves that she has no life, but in the you of this poem, meaning that our speaker's life revolves entirely around the proverbial you, the realm of you, and in fact, so much that our speaker has no examples of something that does not revolve around the realm of you. So yes, those are things expressly told to us in this poem, but that, in my opinion, is not what we are here to talk about. What we are here to talk about with this poem happens extracurricular to this poem. What we are here to talk about with this poem are all of those implications made by the poem, not the things told to us. Namely, we are, in my opinion, to pass judgment on our speaker. Now, passing judgment doesn't necessarily have to be in the sort of colloquial way that we use it. We don't have to pass judgment and castigate. We have to assess. We have to understand. Ernest Hemingway says that the job of the writer is not to judge, but to understand, loosely speaking, something like that was the quote. That's not it exactly, but close enough. If that's the job of the writer, certainly it's the job of the reader as well. Maybe to a little bit of a different extent. We are not trying to... The writer has to understand the villain to place him in the book. The reader just has to understand that he is the villain. We don't necessarily have to sympathize or empathize with him as the villain, but we do have to recognize him as the villain. We are left here with this poem to recognize, in my opinion, something else entirely. How safe, how smart, how useful is it to have no life outside the realm of someone else? And these are all different questions. How smart, how safe, how useful is it? Someone is disposing bodies with a chainsaw outside of my apartment. It's obvious. I don't know if you could hear that. Um, that is metal on metal. Had a fake leg, I suppose. So, how useful is it to not have any life outside of someone else when that someone else decides you are no longer their someone? Jean-Paul Sartre has a quote, "Hell is other people." I can understand that quote. Even, I think, if you don't believe that quote, if you don't empathize with that quote, you can sympathize with it. You can understand that at times it does seem that everyone simply seems to be there to ruin your day. You understand that feeling if you don't understand that mindset. Hell is other people. Now, what is hell? I have a point here, I promise. Hell is other people, but what does hell itself mean? If we go back to the very first rumblings of a place known as hell, it wasn't known as hell, but basically what it was an abyss. It was the great abyss. It was separation from God. That's kind of what it was, how it started. So, hell is other people. Hell is also the abyss. We get from Nietzsche, if you stare long enough into the abyss will stare back into you. Is this true of people? If we can construct a tautology here. Is this true of people? If you stare long enough into people, they will stare back into you. I don't think it necessarily is. Because the great terror in that quote from Nietzsche, if you gaze long enough into the abyss gazes also back into you. The terror of that is that the abyss is understanding you. The abyss is knowing you. I think, in my opinion, as we are here in order to, on some level, judge the speaker of this poem, a lot of times in life as well as literature, and sort of in a meta way, in an ironic fashion, is the case with the speaker of this poem. What we are doing when we are judging is we are projecting ourselves. All too often, maybe not all too often, but almost all the time. I don't know if that it can be fairly said that that's too often. Almost all the time, what we are seeing in other people are projections of our own mental states. That being true, looking into the abyss and the abyss looking into you, the abyss is there to understand you the way that we are here to understand this poem, the way that writers are there to understand, not to judge. Other people looking into you are mainly projecting, at least in my opinion. Because of this, a poem like this one is, in my opinion, incredibly dangerous, not for the reader, but for the speaker. I have no life but this to lead it here, nor any death but less dispelled from there, nor tie to earths to come, nor action new, except through this extent the realm of you. To pin one's entire existence on the whims of another is, in my opinion, not a great thing to do. How safe is it? How good is it? How right is it? How moral is it? How righteous is it? What is the line for how much of yourself, how much of your you, how much of your existence can be derivative from someone else? I don't know. But this poem, in my opinion, forces you to reconcile with that. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos a week, and there is poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.